You're busy, you've got a decent practice, but nobody wants to be decent. You want to be great, and you want to have a great practice. So how did the most productive, profitable dentist in the nation balance real life, work, and profits, and somehow make it all seem fun? Well, it comes down to simple, everyday practices. So grab a lunch, join us as we chat with top clinicians and influencers to discover their formula for uncommon success. Are you ready? Then it's time to explore everyday practices with Vicki McManus-Peterson and Dr. Chad Johnson.
Welcome to another edition of Everyday Practices. I'm your host, Vicki McManus. I gave Chad Johnson the day off, and he's going to be sorry that he missed this. Today I have Travis Hornsby with me with Student Loan Planner, and we're going to talk about student debt. And I know that's a big pain point for a lot of our listeners. You dream about being a dentist, you go to dental school, that was hard enough, but then you leave dental school and you bring with you an average of $289,000 in debt before you get your first paycheck. So Travis, welcome to Everyday Practices.
Great to be on. Grab a strong drink because, everybody loves talking about student loan debt, right?
And you're from St. Louis, right?
I am craft brew capital of the world and Budweiser capital of the world, right? So I'm just kidding. Or maybe you can just grab painkillers, whatever your preference is.
That's right. We'll sit you and Chris Moriarty down with a Miller Lite and let you commiserate. So how did you get into this concept of refinancing student debt?
Sure. So we basically tried to find whatever the best path is for the doctor. And we started doing this because my wife had a six-figure amount of med school student loans. And I helped her craft a plan because I was a bond trader and I was good with Excel models. So I did that. And then she told all of her friends, hey, at the time we were just dating, my boyfriend knows all this stuff about student loan debt, you should talk to him. And I did. I was like one of the few people that knew anything about it several years ago. And then those friends told their friends, and then it turned into a business. And then I started having hire people, and now we've advised over $500 million of student loan debt. So it's just figuring out what the right thing is to do for the dentist. Do you consolidate it? Do you get it on an income-driven plan, like revised pay-as-you-earn or pay-as-you-earn to get interest subsidies, or go for forgiveness? Do you refinance it to a lower interest rate? And when do you do that if you're planning on becoming a practice owner, or if you're already a practice owner? What things do you need to know to make sure that your business is protected too, given that you have all this student loan debt? You don't want it to mess anything up.
So you helped your girlfriend, now wife, get her student debt. So walk me through a typical scenario of what the debt would look like and how much you can save, or is it that you actually save money doing this, or it cash flows better, or some combination? Walk me through a typical case.
Sure. So you've got $300,000 of somebody that just graduated dental school from University of Washington, right? Maybe I should have said 400,000, but we'll just pretend it's 300,000. So this person graduates, and if they did absolutely nothing other than what they, were just going to do anyway, maybe they go to a 1-year residency program, right? Like a GPR, AGD, or something like that. And they just put it in deferment. They don't touch it. They just let it sit there. And then their 6-month grace period's up when they finish their training, and then they decide to finally make payments. And so they just sign up for income-based repayment or whatever plan that they can find, right? Instead of doing that, the person could have consolidated that $300,000 of student debt, consolidating meaning keeping it with the government and turning that into one big loan with the government. And if this person is planning on making, $200,000-$300,000 a year as a practice owner at some point, then that person could get it onto revised pay-as-you-earn. And that payment, if you do it right after graduation, can be set up so that it's $0 a month, except instead of having that full 7% interest grow on you, that repay program can actually cover half of your interest. So your effective interest rate is basically 3.5% for that first year instead of 7%. So on a $300,000 balance, you're saving 3.5% interest in year one. Right away, that's $10,000 worth of savings. That's one example.
Wow, that's amazing. So give me, if I were sitting here, let's say I'm 3 years in, postgraduate, and I feel like this debt is keeping me from maybe going for my dream job. I feel like I need to stick it out where I'm at, whether I like the working conditions or not, because that's what you do. I'm going to grind it out and pay off my student debt. Do you have any thoughts about how I unhook that and get a little more freedom and a little more choice in my life?
Yeah, like the only situation where you're stuck is if you refinance as an associate and you have no choice but to pay $3,000 or $4,000 a month or whatever it is. If you have federal debt, you should never be restricted from owning your own practice because it's always a percentage of your income, never more than that. So, for example, you can also update that income whenever you have a drop in income. So let's say that you do a startup. Let's say you have $50,000 in the bank and you're living super frugal and you've got a paid off card and everything, but you're really worried about your debt. Well, as soon as you quit your job, you could call up your loan servicer and update your income. And your payment amount could go from $1,500 a month to maybe $100 a month or $0 a month or whatever your current income is when you take that plunge and try to do a startup. And that payment can stay very low until your taxable income for a full year is a certain level. Then you might have to recertify and make the payment higher again. But that's a huge misnomer that student loan debt should prevent you from doing anything. In fact, it should prevent you from doing nothing. In my experience, what typically prevents people from doing something is inertia and a lack of emergency savings.
Oh, so let's go down that road. If I have a choice of putting money in emergency savings versus paying down student debt, do you give advice like that or?
Yeah, well, so just to give you an example, like if you don't have emergency savings, you can't get approved for a practice loan, probably in a lot of cases. If you don't have emergency savings, you can't hire practice management consultants, marketing consultants like you guys, like when, you need to expand your practice or you're trying to come up with a new, kind of thing to invest in, right? So it's just very important that you have emergency savings to achieve especially any entrepreneurial ambitions that you have. And you need at least 6 months expenses in an emergency fund. And
I love that. So you're helping them build their working capital.
Yeah, like and making sure that the student loan debt's not an obstacle to them doing that. So like everybody gets this mentality like I've got $200,000 of loans, I got to immediately go full bore into my loans and start paying $5,000 a month on them because I want to be done in 5 years. And sometimes we get consults like that. And I'm like, hold up, what's your practice goals? Oh, I want to own a practice in 2 years. Okay, well, you can do this subsidy thing where you're getting an effective interest rate that's as good or even better than some refinancing situations in your first couple of years of practice. And then when that subsidy goes away because you're making too much money, which happens usually for a lot of people after a few years, then at that point you should have already had your emergency fund stashed away. You should have already bought a practice and you can start addressing the student loan debt at that point. But we also kept it from growing that much by getting it onto the right plan. And there's also situations where you don't need the subsidies because you're going for a pure forgiveness play. And this can get super complicated. I don't want to bore readers or listeners, with some of the complexities. But just to give you just one example, Washington State is a community property state. So a lot of people have stay-at-home spouses that are dentists or at least spouses that earn a lot less than they do. And when you file as married filing separately in a community property state, you can have your income be significantly less for tax purposes because you equally distribute the income across both spouses equally. And that gives you an opportunity, if you're on the right repayment program, to pay even less, and that could potentially drastically increase the future value of forgiveness if you're going for forgiveness on your loans. And that's just one example. So like the takeaway message, I don't want to get too much into the weeds because people will quickly be like, oh my gosh, like what is he saying? But the takeaway message is I think my personal belief is most dentists should be practice owners. A lot of dentists that are just underconfident, and there's a very low probability of failure in becoming a practice owner. And if you want to be a partner, that's fine. It doesn't matter how you become an owner as much as it is that you eventually have a big asset that is partly dental practice equity. So that's kind of what my big belief is. And student loan debt can obviously slow that down a lot, like it slows down home ownership and, having family, and it shouldn't.
Right. Well, I just want to reiterate, we're talking to a bond trader here, a Wall Street guy who's saying the best investment you can ever make is to own your own business because the ROI, the upside potential is so much greater than taking a percentage of your income, putting it in a 401k and hoping that one day that's going to build itself to create your financial security. Am I getting that right?
Well, I actually believe in doing all those things. I think that people should be maximizing their 401k. I think they should be making big investments in their dental practice and growing their dental practices, I think people should be having a brokerage account and putting, a couple thousand a month into, index mutual funds. And if you want to get involved in real estate, I think that's okay too. But the thing that people should realize is the only section of asset class that you have any competitive edge in is a dental practice, because you're a dentist and people can't go set up, a dental practice just overnight. It's a big barrier to entry, right? So, and it's very low chance of failure. So you combine high barrier entry to low chance of failure. And if you're working as an associate for somebody else with no partnership or ownership track or plans, I think that you're just giving away a lot of the value of your labor that you could be capturing instead.
I love it. And how many clients do you work with?
We've had about 500 or 600 dental and dental specialist clients, and then about 2,300 overall that we've done plans for one-on-one.
Wow.
And we've touched obviously a lot more than that with presentations and our blog, which gets a lot of readers every month, and we have a student loan planner podcast. If people love listening to the other people that have it way worse off than you do, that's a great podcast for you. Million plus borrowers, people that are just really deep in the hole. But the cool thing is you're taking this situation that feels hopeless and turning it around to this amazing situation. I had an example today where somebody thought she was going to work until she was dead. And I'm saying, well, actually, if you manage this all correctly and you start really, changing your trajectory a little bit, you could be retired by the time your youngest kid is about to go to college. She was just blown away.
Wow. I love it. Yeah, I'm on your blog right now. What a great site you have. So for all of our listeners, go to studentloanplanner.com. I love the way you break it down by chiropractor, dentist, lawyers, all that. You've got topics here. And dentistry is the number one job in America for debt.
That's a play on U.S. News and World Report, because they're always putting dentistry and orthodontist and other dental specialty fields up at the top 5 jobs in America, and they never ever talk about the cost.
Right.
Kind of a joke, but yeah, there's a lot of fun articles on there.
Is it one of the most expensive educations there is now, or is there any that top it?
It's the most expensive in terms of just the DDS DMD degree. And then it also is the most expensive in terms of absolute debt for dental specialists. I very rarely see a student loan debt burden above $700,000 that's not a dental specialist.
Wow. What an amazing. And you know what? You're a young guy and you don't have gray hair and you don't seem to be stressed about this. It's this it's debt. Let's handle it.
Yeah. It's a first world problem. Honestly, there's some other podcasts I listen to where people talk about, location matters. And they said, if location didn't matter, go set up a practice in the Congo or something, or the Brazilian rainforest, and if you think about those kind of things, the fact that you're a dentist in the United States defeats any financial kind of issues you're going through if you manage them right. Yeah. It's just about having a plan. And most people don't have a plan because this stuff can get really complicated and you get analysis paralysis and you just sit around and do kind of whatever feels good. And then you end up costing yourself tons of money and lots of years working when you didn't have to.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I like your balanced approach to it too, because you're not either go pay off all your debt tomorrow if it sacrifices your investment in some other area of your life, buying a practice, investing, getting your working capital, getting those emergency funds, buying a home. But then again, be smart about it, right? And so using your strategy, I can take my 7% interest rate to 3.5% interest rate. That at that point, it just becomes a cost of doing business, right?
Yeah, it does. Well, and that 3.5 might only be for a couple of years, and then the interest rate goes up higher, and then you have to figure out what to do in that situation. There's so much nuance to this. And honestly, when I was a bond trader, you're competing for fairly small returns against super, super smart people. And right. I guess I'm kind of lazy because I wanted to go somewhere where I could make a huge difference, but there was just no competition.
Love it.
So, you could save somebody tens of thousands of dollars with this stuff sometimes, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars if somebody's really making a lot of mistakes. And, to get those kind of returns elsewhere, takes a lot more work.
So what is the availability, and does it make sense to look into job opportunities that have loan forgiveness? Is that still available through the military or through working in public health or things like that?
It sure is, but I usually view that as the tail wagging the dog, meaning that nobody should ever take a job because of loan forgiveness, because financially it doesn't make sense, no matter how much debt you have to do that. And the other reason why it doesn't make sense is the kind of not-for-profit or military jobs that exist for dentists. I don't really run across that many people that are kind of wanting to do public health dentistry for 10 years. They tell me that they do, and then they call me 3 years into it, and they're like, I'm exhausted. I'm just doing fill and drill all day, and I just can't go into work. I'm just going to fall apart. So
are most of those programs like 10-year programs?
Well, public service loan forgiveness, the biggest one is 10 years. The military one, you can get the HPSP scholarship, and they'll cover a big part of school for you. And I think that's okay. I think that's fine. But, do these jobs because you want to be a military dentist or you have a passion for public health dentistry. Don't do them because, you think that's going to help you with your loans. That's something that you should do. That's just a nice to have, that you're not doing it for that reason. Like, I even had a case recently where somebody was doing the National Health Service Corps, which is a program where you can get tens of thousands a year put towards your loans. And she was living apart from her husband doing public health dentistry, and she had a 2-year commitment, and they're living in separate cities. And I showed her that her loans were actually best set up for existing federal forgiveness programs. In other words, she didn't even need the loan forgiveness program that she moved to this practice to do.
Wow.
And so she was living apart from her husband for 2 years because she made a decision about her student loans that if she had talked to us sooner, we would have told her that she didn't need to do that.
Wow. So you probably not only improved the quality of your life, you may have saved a marriage.
Maybe. I mean, we have some people reach out to us that are, an extreme end, like having mental health crises. And we have to connect people with some services sometimes because it's a burden. It's a big psychological burden when you have $500,000 of debt, or $600,000 or $700,000 if you're talking about like Midwestern and NYU or USC. And even if there's a mathematical rational answer that you'll be perfectly fine and how to manage that, it takes a huge psychological toll on someone. So hopefully we've saved some lives in addition to some marriages.
I can see that. Financial stress is crushing. It's absolutely crushing. Do you do this an interesting dental fact? In 1999, the University of Buffalo did a study on stress and its impact on alveolar bone, right, on the jawbone. And what they studied the stress of getting married, getting divorced, having a baby, parents dying, all this kind of stuff. And the only stress that caused alveolar bone loss was financial stress. And I think I read that like in Kiplinger, back at the turn of the century. So it's like, got stressed, got money stress, you should floss, was the headline on it. But I thought that's really interesting, the physical impact of financial stress, and how amazing that you're aware of this and can help people really understand its impact.
Yeah, I love doing it. It's like something exciting to wake up and do every day instead of, I when I was a bond trader, I was managing money for like tax exempt bond funds, which you only invest in if you're making more than like $500,000 a year, for the most part. So, I was helping people that had already made it in life. And now I get to help people that can make it in life, partly because of kind of the path that we help them get on. So it's just really exciting.
I love it. So how would someone get started with you?
Reach out to us, help@studentloanplanner.com. One of the team members or myself will reach out and just kind of tell you, as long as you tell us what debt you have and what your situation is, we'll tell you next steps. And then you can also just go to studentloanplanner.com/help if you just want to read about the service and see all the details about what it is, how much it costs, like, what it's going to do for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm on your site right now, and it's just got this button that says hire us. It's pretty straightforward. I love it. And so if you owe $50,000 to $1 million in student loans, I cannot even imagine $1 million in student loans.
Oh yeah, a lot of people know the Dr. Mike Maru story that came out in the Wall Street Journal. He was an orthodontist that owed $1 million of student loan debt. But we've had 3 clients that have owed that much. And even though there's only like 100 in the entire country.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, like I have people that have, you know, $700,000-800,000 in student loan debt individually on regularly.
That's incredible. Well, Travis, thank you so much for being with us. I'm going to make sure that Dr. Johnson listens to this. Chad and I have this conversation all the time about paying off student debt, general debt, you know, what's the best strategy? And the answer really is it depends on what your goals are. So thank you for helping us clarify that. I learned a lot today, and we're excited to help promote the Student Loan Planner. Before we go, I have one last question that we ask all of our guests, and it's a one-word answer. You just make a choice. Bacon or eggs?
Bacon.
Bacon all the way. There you have it, folks, another episode of Everyday Practices.
Bring your lunch or take us to the gym again next week to improve your everyday practices. Also, subscribe on iTunes, follow us on social media, and sign up for our email list. Now get out there and win with Everyday Practices.